Hello and a very warm welcome back to Widowed AF. You're here with me, I'm your host, Rosie. And joining me today, I've got Rachel Bourgham, all the way from Minneapolis. Now, Rachel is a writer and she has a published book called Widowland, which I'm going to confess to her when I speak to her, I haven't actually read. This is not entirely laziness and disorganisation on my part. There is also a method to my madness. When I speak to the guests, I know very little about them. And if I were to read a memoir, I'd know pretty much everything about their story. So my thinking is it's a lot more genuine for me to react on mic, as it were. And we'll both sort of hear the story together. So Rachel and I have actually been in each other's lives since 2018 because that's when we were both widowed. And we both joined the Hot Young Widows Club. That group was run by Nora McKinney, and it morphed. There were some issues. It became a different group. So in order to kind of maintain this community, it morphed into, and I have to write this down so I can read it. It's the group formerly known as Moderately Attractive Middle-Aged Widows Gang. So that's us, and that's how I know Rachel. So we've had a sort of insight into each other's lives. You know, I knew that she'd written a book, but I'm going to be honest with you, until I saw her application, I didn't know how her husband had died. And I do think it's weird that you can go through this journey with somebody and not know that. Anyway, I'm going to stop wittering on and introduce you to Rachel Bourgham.
Hello and welcome to Widowed.
Yes, hi. So Rachel, I did tell the listeners a little bit about who you are and how we met, but welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
And I noticed that you used to write for a paper in Petoskey.
Yes.
Yeah, I was in Petoskey like 2 weeks ago.
What?
Yeah, I've got Petoskey stones and I put my feet in the water.
I had no idea.
I know. I wish I'd known this before because we absolutely could have met up. But anyway, I digress. So you're now based in Minneapolis, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So Rachel, obviously you're on today because you are in fact widowed AF. And as I explained to the listeners before, I haven't read your book and I really, really want to. And we're going to talk a bit about that. But it does mean that I'm coming into this interview blind, as it were. So I'm going to let you take the mic and just tell me a little bit about your husband, Colin. Tell me, go right back. Tell me how you met. And then, we'll get to the nitty gritty when we get there.
Yeah. So Colin and I met in 2001. I was living in Northern Michigan and working, and he was from Northern Michigan, but he was living in Pennsylvania at the time. And we, I think we were introduced by a mutual friend online, and we just started chatting. And I think it would have been about, 2 months after we started talking, he packed up his car and he came to where I was. He drove all night long.
Oh my goodness.
And I know it's crazy to think about. It's like another life ago, but
he showed up on my... that song, I Drove All Night.
Right.
I drove all night.
He showed up at my door on a Sunday morning and we hit it off. I think we went out to lunch and hung out all day. And then 6 weeks later, he proposed and we got married in 2003. Again, another life ago. It's like crazy to think about what we were like back then because we were such babies. I think I was 25 when we got married. He was 24. Our birthdays are the same week, but we're just a year apart. And then we moved up to Petoskey in 2005, and our son was born. Our son Tom was born in 2009. And in 2015, he got a job offer here in Minneapolis. And so Tom had just finished kindergarten, and we figured now's the best time if we're going to move. We moved here, started our life together, and bought a house. And in April of 2018, he was killed in a cycling accident with the light rail, which is the commuter train here in the Twin Cities. On his way home from work, he used to ride his bike to work most days. And he was just maybe 5 blocks from home when he was hit and killed on his way home. And yeah.
And here we are.
And here we are.
So my first question, right? I'm coming straight in with a question. Is how? Because how? And I don't feel you've got to give me too much detail if you don't want to, but just
no, I will never know the true answer of why and how. What I think happened based on police reports and witness statements is he was traveling west. So it was like 6:45 at night when it happened. So I think it was a very bright and sunny day. And I think he was riding into the sun. And what I do know is that he was hit by a northbound train, but at the same time, there was a southbound train that had just gone through the intersection. So the arms were down. And the only thing I can think about is that he couldn't see, he was blinded by that sun that he was riding into and was killed by the northbound train. And he was not wearing headphones. He wasn't under any substances. Toxicology report showed that. I think he was just in a hurry to get home and be with his family. Mm-hmm. And there was some witness statements that said that it appeared that his, the wind force from the train kind of sucked him in. But I'll never know exactly what happened and why it happened. And that sucks. And I know that you have a similar situation, with your husband, and you'll never know exactly what happened.
I've written down, we'll never know what happened.
We'll never know what happened. And it's an awful thing to live with, but I can't sit here and dwell on that. We can't do that. That's not productive thinking.
No, because the whys and the ifs and the maybes and the buts, they serve no purpose, do they? Because the outcome is the outcome. What's happened has happened.
Right.
But that must have been, and I speak from first-hand experience, Rachel, that must have been an enormous shock. So where you were at home, presumably, with your little boy?
Yeah, so Tom was 9. And it was at one of those situations where Colin had stayed late. He was usually home about 6 o'clock, but it was 6:45. And he had stayed late to help a coworker with something. And Tom and I were at home. Tom was playing video games in the living room, and I was making dinner. I was making tacos, and I remember setting the table. The table was all set. I was cooking on the stove. And I just kept thinking, where is he? Because I knew when he was leaving, he texted me that he was leaving. And I said, be careful, because I always said that to him. And I was looking at my watch, and I'm like, man, it's been 45 minutes. Where is he? He's late. And I remember stepping out into the street a couple times and looking down, is he riding down the street? No sign of him. And my heart started racing. I knew something was wrong. And I got an alert on my phone. We have Nextdoor. I don't know if you guys have that over there. It's an app that's kind of what's
Nosy
going on
neighbors.
In your neighborhood. Yeah, nosy neighbors is a good way to put it. I got an alert that the light rail train was stopped right by our house, and that there had been an accident with a cyclist. And my heart sank. It's I knew. And the weirdest part about this to me in retrospect is that Tom had been complaining that he's hungry. When's Daddy going to be home? When are we eating? And I kept saying, just wait, dinner will be ready as soon as he gets home. We're going to eat. I went out to the living room and I said, get your coat and your jacket on. We have to go somewhere. And he didn't say a word. He just did it. And for a 9-year-old boy to not complain or not ask questions, in retrospect, is very bizarre.
Compliant.
We got in the car. I drove over there. I pulled off to the side, and the train was blocking. I couldn't see on the other side. It was blocking the intersection. I told Tom to stay in the car. I get out. I go and I kind of look under the train, and I could see a white bicycle, and he had just bought a brand new white bicycle 2 weeks before.
Rachel.
And I remember some guy was there and he's like, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I think that's my husband." And then I ran around. So Tom's still in the car. I ran around to the end of the train so I could get on the other side. And there was a officer and she said, "You can't be over here." And I said, "I think that's my husband." And she said, "Just a minute." And she went and got another officer. And they said, "What's your husband's name?" And I told them Colin Bourgham. And they just shook their head. They didn't even say a word to me. They just shook their head. And I screamed. And I said some profanities. And
No shit, right?
right. And I remember saying, "My son is in the car. What am I supposed to tell him?" And I went back to the car. I opened the door, and the look on my son's face before I even said a word, it's just ingrained in my memory. And I said, "It's Daddy. I think he's dead. Come on, let's go." And we walked back over there. And by now I'm like, this whole thing of, I had this in my head of just saying, what do I do? What do I do?
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do. And so I called my next door neighbor. I knew she was home and she was over there. She came over. I called one of my best friends here and it went right to voicemail, but she called me back, I think, or texted me back. I don't remember how that happened. I called a couple other people and the first response from everybody was, "What?"
Yeah.
Like they didn't believe me. And
that's quite difficult, isn't it? Because you're trying to break really awful news and people are like,
"What do you want me to say? Like, I'm serious. Like, why would I be joking about this?" I called her, I just remember standing there, waiting for people to show up. And it could have been 2 minutes. It could have been 20 minutes. I don't remember, but it seemed like an eternity. I called my mom. My parents were on vacation.
Mine too.
We had just seen my parents a couple days before this, and they were 12 hours away. And I said, my mom answered and she said, "I can't talk right now. We're sitting in a theater. There's a show about to start." And I said, "No, Colin died." And I remember hearing her scream in this crowded theater. And I could, her phone was still, we were still connected. And I could hear "Excuse me, excuse me." They're trying to get out of this theater.
The desperate need to get
it's to just you. All these memories are seared in there. And then it gets fuzzy after this. So I remember people showing up to my house that night, friends and neighbors and Colin's coworkers. And I just remember my friend Kate, who is my sister, eating tacos that I made, eating the tacos. And I just remember seething and just feeling this complete disdain. How dare you?
Mm-hmm. How dare you still be alive and eating?
And I remember looking around the room at everybody that was filling up my house, and they're there for me. They're making phone calls, they're doing the things. And I just remember thinking, 1, what am I supposed to do now? And 2, how dare all of you not feel what I feel right now? And I know that that's a common theme for all of us.
Yeah. And
it just makes me awful to think that I felt that way about people I love and care about and that were there to support me. But in those moments, how dare you go on with your life? Yeah. My husband just died.
Yeah. I was the same. And when people came and supported me, but then they would return home to their normality, their alive husband and their non-traumatized children. And very similar to you, that what on earth do I do now? What do I do? And I think when it is so sudden like that, I've never even had a conversation with Ben about what we would do if one of us died.
Right.
So there's no warm up, so to speak. Now, at this point, have police spoken to you at all, or have you literally just had that kind of, and I'm assuming it was not a reassuring head shake of no, not him, it was that a sort of sad, this is, yes, I'm sorry, it is your husband, but has anybody yet sort of told you any detail of what's happened or even confirmed it?
Well, I mean, I've never gotten a phone call or had cops show up at my house to tell me. It was him, like one of our close friends who came to the scene before we went back to my house. He went over to confirm that it was Colin when he was loaded in the back of the medical examiner's truck. And I remember he told me that he yelled at his body, as weird as that is. And then, like, I do have a police report and all this stuff that I had to get for insurance purposes, right? And I read through that once when I first got it. But yeah, I guess in retrospect, I'd never had anybody actually come tell me, "Hey, your husband died."
I'm thinking, where was the hand holding, the sort of family?
There was no hand holding at the scene, beyond like my friends.
Yeah.
But there was no hand holding with like those who would be in charge of investigating something like this.
That's horrible, isn't it?
It's horrible.
That awful can happen, and you're sort of just left. You had to create your own network around you.
Yeah.
If you don't mind this, because I know this can be particularly painful. Tom was 9, and
yes,
so I think he's around a year older than my son was 7, but really 8 at the time.
Yeah,
and telling Monty was probably the hardest, because the other two, Tubby was a baby, and Hector, you didn't really understand at the time. And I'm thinking, what a terrible way for Tom to find out, because I at least had the small luxury of being able to process the news overnight to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Gather them to me, tell them in a calm, probably it wasn't that calm, who am I kidding?
Right.
But tell them in a sort of safe environment. But Tom had to find out at the scene of the accident, and how on earth did he react to that?
I don't remember. He cried, but other than that, he was very quiet.
Yeah.
And I'm just, I do remember tears at the scene, and I remember him when I told him, he was like still buckled in the back seat of the car, and I was like leaning in, and he hugged me. I don't really remember him having many other like strong outward emotions.
Yeah, that's quite common though, isn't it? Children
I think so.
Look at it a bit.
There was one moment that night when back at the house, so Tom's bedroom was upstairs. Ours was on the main floor. And he said he was going to sleep in my bed with me. He was going to sleep. I was going to lay there and stare at the ceiling.
Yeah.
And
what on earth you were going to
do? Luckily enough, my friend Kate, she did spend the night with us, so we were not alone. And I remember before bed, he went up. He said, "I'll be right back," and he went upstairs to his room, and he grabbed this framed photograph that he always had like on his nightstand, and it's a photo of me and Colin and Tom at this like holiday open house in Petoskey where we used to live. And Tom was on Colin's shoulders. And he said something like, "At least Daddy will be here tonight while we're sleeping," or something, like be with us. Oh, no. And I remember like, even just thinking about that, it kind of breaks my heart a little bit. But Tom is very much like his dad in that he doesn't express those emotions outward as much. So there wasn't anything really strongly out of him that night.
And it sounds like you had, family and friends really kind of wrap you up. And that's really helpful for children in this situation, because they need to see that their caregiver is being supported, right, so that they can heal as well. And I don't know whether you had anybody say something. I know in your book you have got a chapter on things not to say to widows. And I wondered if anybody said to Tom, you're the man of the house now, because it's And
It's
I
like,
think that puts them a lot more.
thanks for saying that to my 9-year-old.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for making sure that he won't express his emotions.
Right.
Yeah, we had, and it took, Monty has had, he won't mind me saying this, but he's had some talk therapy, and we've worked through that. But I can still remember to this day my mum saying to me, "No, Monty, we're here to look after mum, and mum looks after you. That's how it works. You know, you don't need to worry about looking after mum." And I think it's an enormous weight to put on a child's shoulders when they've just been given this very heavy burden that they're going to have to carry for the rest of their lives.
Yeah. And I am just so proud of some of our friends and like some of Colin's coworkers and friends. And they've been amazing. And they, in the years since then, they still talk to Tom. They still show up for us. I had some of Colin's male coworkers just keep taking Tom out and doing things in that first year. And that's just, I cannot thank them enough.
Yeah.
And you really do get to see who your friends are and your true supporters in this time. And I think sometimes it really surprises you who they are and who they are not.
Yeah, Ben's best friend, he doesn't have children, has no interest in children at all. But for at least, I would say it was probably at least 3 years, he took me and the kids out and did something with us. Took us once to London Zoo, once to a farm. And that meant so much to me because it was a living, breathing connection to their dad. And we can curate and keep the memories, but only of the time that we were with them. So it's nice for them to get to speak to somebody that knew them in another context or in another time.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very much. Yeah.
So after, I'm going to say, the dust has settled, so you're home, you have accepted that your husband is dead insofar as you can accept it in the early hours and days. What happened then? Was there any investigation? Did you have to sort of fight for insurance, anything like that?
I'm lucky that I never had to fight for insurance. Because it was ruled an accident. I did. So one of our close friends here, he is a attorney in town, and he set me up with a accident attorney. So I did. I think it was like 2 days after Colin died. My parents had arrived the next morning, and my dad and I went 2 days after Colin's death to meet with this attorney and with our friend. So this would have been April. And so that went on for a while. And, law is different in every state with how accidental death works. I think in Minnesota, you have to prove like it's the other party's fault 50.1%.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So they did do some work, and I think it was by December, they determined that it was not going to be a viable case. They said, I remember that like thinking like they could get up to a certain amount, but they weren't going to get past 50%. It was Colin's fault. It was an accident. And
that's something that's really difficult to accept because, again, another parallel in our stories is that the skipper, the captain of the boat that Ben was on, police did investigate him because there'd been 2 deaths prior on the same boat, unconnected and unrelated, but it was enough for the police to begin to form a case. The CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, they declared there wasn't enough evidence to take it any further. But much like you, I'm assuming here that I kind of wanted somebody to blame. I wanted it to be somebody else's fault and not the fact that, much like Colin, Ben was doing something he did regularly, that he was competent at, that he was safe doing. And a lapse of judgment or a lapse of concentration or a glare of sunlight. And I could not get my head around the fact that somebody's as vibrant as Ben could just be extinguished like that. Somebody or something had to be to blame here. And actually, when I went to coroner's court just to to find out the ruling of his death, which was misdemeanor, and actually my solicitor didn't feel that there was a case that they could put forward either. And somehow letting go of that was quite liberating because it wasn't about the money. I mean, I could have used it back then, don't get me wrong, but it was about somebody being culpable. Whereas actually what I had to do was just accept that it was a terrible accident and terrible accidents happen, and sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. And that's really scary.
Yeah. I don't remember feeling that I needed to necessarily blame someone. I knew it was an accident, and it sucks. Like, I want answers. Like, I want, like, why did this happen? Were you just in a hurry? I don't remember ever feeling that way about when I was told by the lawyers that it just wasn't gonna go forward. And I remember being okay with that because I don't think I ever imagined it would go forward anyway. But what I wanted retribution for was all the people completely clueless who did not know us, who would comment on the story online.
Oh, God, yeah.
I'm a journalist by trade. I know what happens in news comment sections. I know that they are usually, most often, well uninformed opinions. And if you go back and you look at some of the comments from Colin's accident, some of the horrible things that people said. And there was an instance a few years ago, and I mentioned this in my book, is Tom Googled his dad, and he stumbled across the comment section.
Oh, no.
And people, I get it. You leave comments, you don't think that the family or friends will ever see them, but they do.
Yeah.
They do. And you can say whatever you want, but you didn't know Colin. You don't know us. You don't know our story. And why would you ever say something like that? That's what I wanted justice for. But I'll never get that.
But do you think in some ways perhaps you have with the book, because you've been able to give yourself a voice to answer back?
I think to an extent, but I think the people who would hang out in comment sections don't read my book. So they don't even remember that it happened now.
No, and that's the thing. It's so easy to do. It's so easy to write something cruel, and it just lives there forever. And even with Ben, I tried to avoid it, but you can't help yourself, can you?
You can't help
have a little look. And it was things like, how stupid was he to go scuba diving with a wife and children at home? I'm thinking, hang on a minute, people die crossing the fucking road. Like, how stupid are you writing on a comment on a local paper section, right? Yeah, fuck off.
Accidents happen. They are called accidents for a reason.
Yeah.
We don't do them on purpose.
No, it wasn't a deliberate thing. Jesus Christ. So in your book, you do talk quite honestly as well, I believe, about what happens next, what you do next. And I wondered if you would just share a little bit about that. Like, what did those early months of widowhood look like and going forward?
Oh, man. So I will preface this by saying we all grieve in different ways.
Of course.
Mine was I spent a lot of money on crap I didn't need.
Oh, yeah.
I went through this red lipstick phase. I went through a vintage t-shirt phase. I bought all new bedding,
cowboy boots. I used to get those delivered and not remember ordering them.
One day I got drunk on Fireball while Tom was at school, and I brought $500 worth of pavers to create this path in my yard. Oh. And I forgot about it until they showed up on 2 pallets a week later. I was like, what the frick is that?
Are they still on the pallets in your garden?
And they're there. I did build this really nice path. I actually did it myself. God, it was such a crazy, weird time because I didn't know what to do with myself. My parents had stayed with us for about, I don't know, week and a half. And then that moment, I remember when everybody was gone, Tom was back at school, and it was the first moment by myself. It was about 11 o'clock in the morning, and I went to the fridge, and I pulled out this container of fresh cut vegetables and the carton of dip. And I just remember sitting on the couch. I didn't even put it on a plate. I just was eating it out because I was like, it's just me. Who cares? Yeah. And then I did what any other
vegetables there.
Right. I was not eating a lot at the time. I lost 20 pounds really quick. Jeez. And then I did what any other grieving woman would do. And I went to Target, and I walked around Target, and I cried in the aisle, and I cried in my car. I I remember feeling during the day, I kept myself busy enough.
Yeah.
Like I mean, there were phone calls to make, like insurance stuff and all that, banking, all that kind of stuff. So I did take care of business pretty well. But it was in the evening. It was like
Yeah.
dinner time on. So I'd cook dinner and Tom and I would eat and he'd go do something, and then it was bedtime. And so he'd go to bed. And I just remember that was when I was like the loneliest. And I remember about a month after Colin died, I went on the dating apps and I was not serious about dating.
Were you curious?
I was
Because they
curious.
didn't exist, right? Back when we met our first husbands.
Right. So, like, remember, like, Colin died like 2 weeks before our 15th wedding anniversary. So we had been together a long time. And I think I was just interested in going out to dinner with somebody who was not my son and not like a friend of mine. I wasn't looking for a relationship, and I ended up going out with some guys, none of them worthwhile at all. And then in August, so 4 months later, Tom and I went back to Michigan, where we were from, and I ended up spending time with a friend of mine who we used to work together. And we ended up dating, and we're married now, and he moved out here. Yeah. So I was not necessarily looking for a serious relationship. I was just lonely.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. But that is fairly soon.
It is fairly soon. I mean,
absolutely no judgment from me, but I'm guessing it might have been a tricky one to sell to Colin's family. And how did they take the news?
I think that they were okay with it, and I think Matt and I would have gotten together in August, and I didn't tell him until October. And because I didn't want to just be like, hey, I started dating someone casually. But like,
you've got to be pretty small, haven't you, before you drop that bombshell?
Yeah. I mean, it was a long distance thing for about a year before he moved out here. And then we got married 2 years after Colin died. So we got married in May of 2020. And the reason we chose May 1st as our wedding day is because because Colin died in April, our wedding anniversary was in April, and I wanted something to look forward to on the other side of the hell that is April for me now. So we got married on May 1st. Yeah.
Nice, easy date to remember as well.
Right.
And how did he react when you and Matt became an item? Because in my experience, the older they get, the trickier it gets. So I'm thinking 10, 11.
Yeah. So he was still 9 when we got together. And then Matt came out for a few days in October, like Halloween time. And so Tom actually knew Matt a little bit just from when we worked together. So when Tom would have to come in the office with me briefly, he would know who Matt was. But then when Matt came out here, they became buddies, and it was easy. And I do remember, now that you asked me this, the same night that Colin died, after Tom brought that picture back into the bedroom for us, he asked me something about if I'm ever going to get married again. Like, he asked me that night.
Kids are brutal.
Kids are wild.
I've heard one of my friends was asked if there was a daddy shop and could they go and get another one. If only, right?
It's so sad, but so funny, and so just spot on for how kids react to this kind of thing. But I think I've just been lucky in the sense that Tom and Matt were always okay with each other. It was always fine. It was easier than I anticipated, because I anticipated having to work through a lot of stuff with Tom about it. Like, yes, I still love your dad. I will always miss your dad. But he understood that from the get-go.
That's really impressive. And I guess an indication of how you've spoken to him about grief. Because one of the most difficult things to explain to anybody is that moving forward, going into another relationship, and I do overuse this analogy, so I apologize to any regular listeners, but the idea that now have 4 children, but I had 3 children. So each pregnancy, I wondered, would I love this baby as much? Because surely, how could I possibly have more love to give? And in much the same way, when you meet somebody and you're widowed, the love that you have for your first husband or wife or partner, that doesn't disappear. It doesn't go away, but they are not here. You've got nowhere to put that love. You can't be in love with a dead person.
I say that all the time, and that's the way I describe it to people is I was able to step into another relationship after Colin because of the type of relationship I had with Colin.
Absolutely.
The love that we had needed to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And I liked being in a relationship.
And I don't think there's any shame in that. I think we're so conditioned to think that we must be strong and we must do it the difficult way, and we must, what is admirable about making the choice to be on your own? I mean, yes, it might be your choice, but doing it because it's the expectation or what other people think you should do, you're denying yourself so much happiness. And I absolutely agree that when you are widowed, and if you were in a very loving relationship, weirdly, it seems easier to love again because you know what it looks like. You know what your expectations are of that love. You know what a healthy relationship looks like. And quite frankly, why would we want to be on your own if there was a choice not to be? I think with this idea that you have to mourn or grieve in a certain way, I've grieved for Ben alongside being married to John, but it hasn't stopped me grieving. If anything, it's helped me because there's been somebody that I can just lean on and cry sometimes.
Right. Exactly. And, I think people who have not experienced loss in the way that you and I have, they'll never understand. You can't possibly understand that. You just can't. You don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole idea that, oh, you're dating so soon, or why are you waiting to date so long? What's the magical time?
Mm-hmm.
What is this magical timeline that people talk about? It doesn't exist.
I'm convinced it stems from this idea of being forgotten themselves. It's an idea that if, in their eyes, if somebody can be replaced, what that means for their own sort of mortality and legacy and all that, I think it stems from a fear. But actually, until you have walked a mile in these widowed shoes, you can't possibly comprehend. And unlike you in your first 24 hours of widowhood, we don't wish it on anybody else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what about, how do you sort of, in your home, because obviously you're now married to Matt, the 3 of you live together. So how have you kind of kept Colin in the house? Do you still have pictures up and you talk about him? Yeah.
There's photos all over there. We talk about him all the time. We do things like maybe on Colin's birthday, I'll make something that he would have wanted on his birthday, like some kind of pie. He liked pie. We've always done something on April 10th, which is the anniversary of his death. We've done some really great things. The first year, Tom and I, so Matt wasn't here in 2019 for the first anniversary, but Tom and I skipped work and school that day, and we went and we volunteered at a food pantry because that was something that Colin was big on, helping people. So we did that. And then 2020, was the pandemic. So I didn't know what to do. So I ordered a piñata and we beat the shit out of a piñata on that day. But we
I like that idea.
I know, it was great. It was like what I could do during the pandemic. That felt really good. But other than like the last few years, we always do something with friends of Colin's. I invite people. One year, like, was it 2021, I guess, Colin was like to homebrew. He made beer and stuff. And so we had all this bottled homebrew still in our basement. And we invited a bunch of his friends over and we drank it in the backyard.
Homebrew's gone now.
Right. And then, like this year was probably my favorite. I invited a bunch of people over who, some of them didn't even know Colin. They never met him, but they've been so important to me over the last few years. we invited a bunch of people over, and it was like a Saturday. We were outside. We got donuts, and we had like a bunch of like snacks and stuff. And it was just, I get teary just thinking about it. It was like all these people who love us so much in different ways and have been there for us. And I was just my way of saying thank you for sticking with us. And I think that's like, I just remember thinking like, Colin would have loved this. Like he would have loved it. And it's because of him that we're doing that. So,
and it's lovely to have everybody come together at an occasion that isn't the funeral, because for a lot of us, that's when everybody comes together, they support you, and then perhaps you stay in touch, but you don't ever come together as a group like that.
And it's so fun. It's just so fun for me to think about like, you know, when like your friends from different parts of your life get together, and they like, so like you have like Colin's friends from work and some of his beer buddies, and then you have my friends, and they all know each other now through this person who's no longer here. But there's that connection, and they're all, you know, they keep up with each other online. They see each other a couple times a year. I love that. And it just makes me so happy to think about that those relationships have developed in Colin's absence.
Yeah.
Because of him.
And I like the thought that they're still being talked about. I went into the jewellers, the local jewellers to me, and I was explaining the importance of my engagement. This is before I lost it. But and the husband of the lady I was speaking to, he said, "Oh, that wasn't off the coast of Dover." And anyway, I won't bore you with the full story, but it transpires that though he didn't know Ben, he mixes with people that did. And he said, I just want you to know that we still talk about him. They still talk about him. And I was so touched, because you do sometimes think, I'm so scared of people forgetting him. I think that's why we do the Facebook post. This is why I talk about him a lot. And like you, some of my friends now never met him. And it's a way of, I don't know, just sort of bringing a bit of them back, I suppose, for want of a better word. Ben would have been 50 in June next year. And I've been sort of ruminating on what to do for it. And like you, I've tried to, I'm 12th of March. We are really close here, less than 2 months apart for our death dates. And I've tried to do things, and we did, you know, the message in a bottle into the sea the first year. I've tried, but essentially I just find it such a sad day. I can't really bring myself to find much to celebrate in it. So I'm thinking, much like you did, I'm contemplating pulling together some friends and family and having a barbecue. I mean, it's England in June, so could go either way. But just to do that, just to celebrate the fact that this, you know, this huge presence is one tall man. He's not here on the day he should be half a century old, and celebrate him, commiserate. I don't know. There's just this, like you said, that kind of pull to be around people that knew him or care about us and have been in my life since. That was quite rambly, but you got the gist, right?
Yeah, I think that's a struggle that we all kind of deal with, is honoring them and remembering them. I love when Colin's friends, like even from long ago, email me or send me a message and like tell me a story. Like I love that, because one of my biggest fears is that eventually you and I are going to start forgetting memories, or they get fuzzier. And you know, like for instance, sometimes I have a bunch of Colin's old voicemails saved on my phone, and sometimes I'll listen to one or two, and I know his voice immediately, but at the same time, it seems so foreign.
Yeah. I've not watched videos yet. I don't know why I'm being such a fanny about it, but I haven't managed to do it. But I'm going to. I say this all the time, but I'll do it when I'm ready.
You'll do it when you're ready.
And I think something about, and this is kind of blowing my own trumpet, but something about these interviews is about creating a legacy. It's about committing to the archives of time, how, you know, who your person was, how they died, how that impacted on you. And that very much is to be true of writing a book. And you have written a book, as I mentioned earlier. Now, am I right that you first attempted to start writing this book 2 weeks after Colin died?
Yeah, I would so I'm a freelance writer now. And I had started freelance writing about 6 months or so, 7, maybe 8 months before Colin died. So I was already at home and kind of in this work pattern. But I started writing letters to Colin about 2 weeks after he died.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I would do that like every Friday. And they weren't good. They were just kind of rambly, what's going on, what feelings I have that day, how mad I was at him for leaving me with all this housework and yard stuff to deal with. And then I shelved it because it was not being productive. Yeah, it was not what I wanted. And then, so one of my things that I do as a freelance writer, I used to work for a newspaper and I was a columnist, and I still write that column every week. And I've been doing that since 2012. And that first year after Colin died,
I'm just going to stop you there. I'm just going to stop you there. You continued to write a column for a newspaper throughout this awful process and all the trauma that happened to you. I just wanted to take a little moment and offer you a little kudos for that, because that's something.
Thank you. I think I did put my other work on pause for a couple months, and I did try to go back to it, and I had to stop again because I could not write. I
couldn't even read.
Yeah, like I went for a long phase where I couldn't read a book.
Yeah, same.
But I think I took about a week off, maybe 2 weeks off from writing my column. And then if I go back and read them from 2018, it's really hard to read because every week it was something about grief.
Mm.
And I'm sure readers were like, oh my God, lady, move on. But you write what you know, and that's all I knew at that moment. And so what I did do was after about 2 years after Colin died, I went back and I started reading what I had written. And I said, there's a book here, and it was going to be a collection of essays. And so what I kind of got it in my head that I would write essays about, it's all about grief, but it goes back to my childhood and how events in my childhood impacted me after Colin died. And it kind of told the story of Colin and I. And I interspersed some of those letters that I had written to Colin. But what I really look at it as is a love letter to Colin. And I wanted my son to know this is our story. Like, this is the story of me and your dad. Because, like I said, there will come a time when I'm not able to remember every memory and share that with him.
This is going to sound like I've totally plagiarized you, and I promise I haven't. But that's because I'm writing a book too. But it's that I keep describing it to people. Mine is it's a collection of like memoirs from the podcast, so it's lots of people's stories interwoven into my own. But the first chapter was very difficult to write, and it ended up, I'm sure it'll get edited the crap out of it. It's 5,000 words, and it's the story of me meeting Ben through to now, where I am now. A very whistle-stop tour, but I describe that as my love letter to Ben and to my children, because look, this is what happened. This is how we got through it. Not how I got through it, how we got through it, because they have helped me as much as I've helped them. They just don't know it. And I wanted to be able to create something that was a legacy to Ben, that would share his story, that would include things like, how we met, where we lived, because yes, like you, those grains of sand keep slipping, and we've got a million photos on our phones, but it's those things that only we know about them that I really wanted to get committed to paper to, I studied journalism. It's that print, isn't it? It's having something tangible in print, and there's a real power in that. Did you find it difficult sort of going into the more personal side of your grieving?
When I was writing it, there were definitely hard days. Like, I cried a lot when I wrote it, and I took a lot of like Tylenol because I had headaches. Like, crying gives me a headache. But I actually found it very helpful in a way. And I if you would have asked me this question 2 years ago after the book came out, I would have said it was not helpful at all. I do think it was helpful now in retrospect. The funny thing is that I thought I was done writing it, and I started looking through it, like ordering, like putting the chapters in order. I totally had forgotten to write the whole chapter about Colin dying.
Oh, wow. Okay. No,
Like
that's quite important.
the whole story that I told you at the beginning about me finding out that he was dead and like driving over there, I didn't write that. But so I had to go back and actually write that. And I think that was probably the last chapter I wrote because I totally forgot.
I wonder if there's
or I was avoiding it.
Well, I think this is what I'm wondering, because for me, the chapter that I've really struggled to write is I've got one called "What About the Children," and it's about how to support grieving children. And I was writing away, and John sits opposite me in the office, and I just, the shoulders are going, and I'm just like, well, how on earth did I do that? And I think it does force you to go back and confront not only the really tough stuff, but also how tough you were. And I know you're on the same page as me that, this bravery that we have in widowhood, that is not a choice. That's just given to us, really. Yep. We have to do that. But making the choice to then share what we went through in the hope that it makes the world a little bit easier, that's really, I think it's something very vulnerable and powerful, but also really scary about it, because you are sharing probably the worst moment of your life, and that's so personal.
You're sharing the worst moment of your life. You're sharing all the things that you did in this complete wall of grief afterward. And a lot of those things, darn well you're not proud of. I'm not proud of the fact that I got drunk off Fireball whiskey and ordered $500 worth of paver stones. But
are you proud that you laid them?
But they look really nice now.
Yeah, and you did it, right?
I did it. I have no idea how I did some of the things that I had to do on my own. Like my son and I, it would have we had bought this house with Colin and I with the idea that we would do some of this work in the house to improve it. And then he died. And so now I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to have to hire someone to do this. My son and I had to move out of our house for this this, big project. I moved everything out of my house into an apartment, and we lived there for 6 months. And I don't know how I did that. No. I don't know how I did all the lawn stuff. We have a big, natural, native plant yard. I have no idea how I did some of the stuff I did in that first year.
No, I packed up my house in lockdown and moved into John's house. And then because he was so sick afterwards, when my house sold, he just physically couldn't help me.
I remember that.
Yep. I just remember I had this skip and I'm lifting up things, and I did feel a bit, empowered and stuff, right? But it's also that I don't know, I didn't really want to have to find out that I could do these things this way.
I forgot about that, about Jonathan. I remember when he was in the hospital, and I remember saying to Matt, I said, do you remember that widow whose husband died on a scuba trip?
Well, guess what?
Guess what? Her new husband is in the hospital dying. And I just remember thinking, holy shit, Rosie.
Buckle in.
You're going to do this. But I remember all of us over here in the States.
You guys were so lovely. And some of the guys from the group sent a parcel, and it was at that time, and also when Ben had recently died, the fact that there was a time difference was hugely helpful for me, because I'd be wallowing in grief at sort of 7, 8 o'clock at night, and you guys would be having your lunch, and then you'd get to hear from me. But that time with John is such a, on its own, that would be such an enormous trauma. And I think sometimes we downplay it a bit because we both lost somebody we love has died, and you sort of almost forget how awful that was. And I think, you try very hard to look forward, but it absolutely was. It was terrifying. And I have had some of the podcasts that's had 2 husbands die, and, the thought of having to build yourself back up again. But, and it's a quote that I do like to mention a lot. If you're in a romantic relationship, one of you is going to be widowed. That statistic is quite people think it won't happen to me. Well, it will. Ideally, it won't happen to you when you're young, but it will happen at some point. And knowing what is normal, things like the widow's fire, things like the impulsivity, the buying, the overspending, the drinking, whatever your poison of choice may be, that's really normal. But once you're locked in that shame circle, that's when it gets really difficult to ask for help. And you think that people will judge you. Well, not here.
Yes. Yeah. I tell people that. I said, you have to find your people, and your people are probably going to be widows.
Yeah.
Like, it's just what it is. And do not listen to anybody who says it's too early to date. Why aren't you dating yet? Move on. They don't know.
No.
They have no idea. And I feel sorry for those people, because someday they're most likely going to find out.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see if they, reserve the same level of judgment for themselves.
Yeah.
Well, Rachel, it has been an absolute delight to talk to you.
Oh, Rosie, you're so sweet.
A fascinating woman. And for anybody who's watching us or is watching, you may see it on a clip, we are wearing matching outfits today. We have similar hair. Maybe I need to do this to my guests, like send a picture of my outfit and they have to wear matching with me. But Rachel, I am going to just let people know where they can get your book. You can get it on Amazon, and it's Rachel. I'm just going to spell your surname one more time. It's Brougham, Rachel Bourgham, and the book is called Widowland. And I'm going to say highly recommend you read it, but I'm going to read it too. I'll read it and report back in real time.
Great. Thanks.
But thank you ever so much for coming on and bearing your soul. Even if you've written a book on the subject, it is still a really difficult thing to do, and I really do appreciate it. And for anybody who is listening out there, if you have any questions for me or you have any questions for Rachel, please do drop them to me. You can get me on Instagram, it's widowedaf, or I'm on there as Rosie Gill-Moss. Take care of yourselves, and I'll be back with you soon with more from the coalface of widowhood. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening. If you found this episode helpful, hit follow or subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you think someone else may benefit from this, please do share. We'd also really appreciate a quick review. It helps more people find the show. Thank you again, and see you next time on Widowed AF.